welcome. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm Rohini. This is Derrick. And we're talking about romantic relationships, as I understand it. I did say to Derrick, we're talking about romantic relationships, and you keep talking about sex, and he didn't actually answer me. So maybe I'll take those questions. But anyway.
We can only hope.
So I did a talk on relationships this morning, but I was reflecting on, what would be different to say about romantic relationships to start, and then Derrick will share, and we're going to open it up. We'd love to hear from you. But one of the things that struck me about romantic relationships is that you probably heard the phrase the honeymoon phase, and that's typically associated only with romantic relationships, maybe friendships, but more often not with romantic relationships. And it's often seen as a time when people are insane and they lose their mind. And I've even seen research that says that the neurochemistry that's going on during that honeymoon phase is kind of like cocaine. And so it's kind of looked upon as a very, not healthy experience. But what I experienced for myself anyway, and what I've seen with others, is that it's actually a period of grace where we just naturally get freed up from our conditioning. And we have this experience of really seeing our partner through the eyes of love and not having all of the weight of the baggage of our conditioned mind coloring that lens through which we see them. But it's not a phase that typically lasts, and even though we have that grace at the beginning, at some point that conditioning tends to come back in. And what can be interesting is sometimes the very things that we found so sexy and attractive in the person that we were drawn to now become the things that really annoy us. And we're like, I can't believe you did that. And so I know for myself, with my husband Angus, I really loved when I met him how laid back he was and how freeform and easygoing. And then, I find out, because a bailiff comes to the apartment that we're living in, that he hasn't paid his parking tickets for months. And in Canada, we don't have bailiffs that come to your apartment saying they're going to take your belongings. So anyway, fortunately he wasn't home and they didn't take anything. But that I found a little concerning and wasn't so pleased about that. So a lot of my conditioning started to come in, and I found myself getting judgmental and critical. And really that was just a reflection of the feelings of insecurity that were starting to come up in me at the time. But I think that when we can really see what that period of time when we are able to see our partner that way, what that opens up as possibility, that really doesn't have to end, that's available. And I'm so grateful for this understanding, because it has not just transformed my life, but transformed how I experience my relationship. And we've been married 29 years now, and it just really, the love keeps deepening and the intimacy keeps deepening, and there's always more to see and enjoy with each other. So I'm just so grateful for what this has pointed me to, so that I'm able to have a clearer lens, not perfectly clear, but clearer, and able to enjoy the love that's there.
Thank you, Rohini. Nice. And the reason why I didn't answer your question, I just gave that awkward laugh I just gave there. God, I didn't think you were serious. But
You don't know me very
apparently
well.
she is. Yeah, and here we are in the room talking about romantic relationships, and been single for 3 years, so I don't know what I know about it. That's it. No, but when I have been in a romantic relationship, I can speak about what I've seen from it, how I saw it then and how I see it now with this understanding. I was mother of my children, or 3 beautiful children. I was in a relationship for 18 years, very sort of like up and down, fractious relationship. Never really, the romance you speak of never really was there for me. It was there for her a lot, but it never really was there for me. It was there in an intellectual form, but it wasn't really there for me. And since I've got this understanding, I've had to sort of reflect on, because it was all her fault, by the way. at the time, it was all her fault, but I really had to reflect on, because in that relationship, I don't know if there was any romance involved, because as in one of her arguments, she could count on her fingers how many times I took her out to dinner in those 18 years, or how many times I appreciated her. And I sort of look back to the relationship before that, and that's where I can see all the romance. And in a way, I was with that girl, and it was a girl I never known love when I was a child. So when I fell in love with this girl, like, it was the one, and I really felt for her. And we broke up. Again, it broke up, and I never really got over it. I always think of her. I would always think of her every single day. I would think of her. 2 years later, I'll think of her. And that, in my thinking, would tell me she was the one. So everyone else is null and void. So I met the mother of my children, and I guess I compared her to everything that girl wasn't. And she couldn't, that was impossible, because she could never be the same. So I judged through that for 18 years, always sort of thinking, yeah, what could have been, and maybe one day I'm going to walk around the corner, we're going to bump into each other and ride off in the sunset. And there was always that fantasy in my head, and I never really was present for those 18 years. And I can admit that and see that now. And I can hold my hands up and I can explain it to the mother of my children. Not that she hears it that much, but I can explain it to her now, and I can sort of feel that me not being present for the 18 years is what caused all the things. And when she split up with me, because you know it had to end like that, she split up with me. So when she split up with me, that's when I sort of had the appreciation and could look back, and I felt so much love for her, and I could see the pain that I put her through and what I did put her through during that time. And just knowing that we could have had something so beautiful if I would have just been present and not stuck in the past. And even the girl that I was talking about before, my children, she had a daughter that I basically raised from childhood, and somehow we got back in contact on Facebook not too long ago. And I had a little brief conversation with the mother, and it was like, what the hell, who are you? Like, I was never meant to be with. And it just sort of contrast that all of that 18 years was wasted in the past, not in the present. And what was there for me in the present, I didn't appreciate. And now, well, like I said, we're not together, but we've got a better relationship than we ever had. And even when she is in her head, because she knows nothing about the principles, or she displays enough, I do talk to her about it, but a little good that does, but yeah, I know that I show up as a better person now for her. That she recently lost her mum, and the way that I showed up for her then, and just showed up for myself, I know that, yeah, I can appreciate that. And living in the past of the 18 years, what's gone on, and oh, I've regretted and I messed that up, I've learned that that's a wasted energy. Just be in the present now and try to be the best version of myself moving forward into my next relationship. Which is why, in a way, I'm in a bit of a jam, because I always used to be a bit of a player and talk rubbish to girls, and I find I can't do that now. It's like, you know, like, but I like that. I like that. I don't know where that comes from. But I like it, and it shows me that I am being a better version of myself. And like I said, that relationship, I got 3 beautiful children, the most amazing children you'll ever see. And yeah, so I was present enough for them, and I'm present for them now, and I'm present for the mother of my children now. And that's my experience of a romantic relationship. I know when I do meet someone and it gets to that stage, I know I'm going to be in a better space now. And even I said before in an earlier talk that all the hardships I've been through relating to the prison stuff and my upbringing, and even this is that, I went through that. So now then moving forward to the next stage, I'm going to be in a better space, and I can show up better for the person that's in front of me. And yeah, that's my sharing on relationship. And we're going to open it up to questions and comments and reflections. So we'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Not sex though, but yeah. Yeah.
Do you want the microphone?
My mouth might be loud enough.
We'll try it.
Sorry, thank you. So I was in a relationship for about 9 years with my son's father, and we've sort of separated at the moment. There's a lot of things that are going on. He has addiction that he's dealing with and things like that, and I thought the best way was for us to be separate, for him to deal with it, because I look at it that you need to sort of deal with yourself before you can help others. and I needed to kind of get to grips with that. But a friend of mine was speaking to me about something that really made me think. She spoke to me about something called love signs. So she said, you know, for you, you might have had a hard day at work, you come home, and for you, what you want is your partner to run the bath for you, or to cook the meal for you, or something like that. So that for you is that person showing you love. But for him, it might have been, but I cleaned the floor, or I emptied the bin, and it's something that I'm like, oh, I could have done that. To me, it doesn't seem like a lot, but for him, that was his love sign. And I don't know how that sort of relates to the principle. For me, I think hearing about this over this weekend, it makes me more present that, oh, actually, maybe, you know, my thought process at the time, maybe I could have been a little bit more aware of what he was trying to do to help. But yeah, it was just something that kind of resonated with me, that actually maybe that was what he was trying to do, and I'm now starting to see those sorts of things. So thank you for showing me that.
No, thank you for that share. And I could even answer to that and say, I've seen that as well in the fact where we've got a thing we call separate realities. And in that separate realities, it's so you could have two twins grow up in a house, experience every single second of their lives exactly the same moment, exactly the same experience, and come out different. And it's the same way how we express ourselves. Because I've realized how I can express my emotions to you, or my appreciation for you. But it's nothing, you don't understand that. Collecting rocks and giving it to you, you're like, oh, you give me all the rocks. But when we understand that he's got a love for rocks, and he loves rocks, and he's just giving you a piece of his love, then it doesn't matter what form it takes. It's just a part of his love he's given you. And then how you show your love, it's about him understanding that separate nature, separate reality. And that's how we mingle. It doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be opposites attract. It just has to be an understanding that there's a separate reality going on. And how one person appreciates that is another way. And even to go to another thing where we had this discussion once where we were talking about presents, giving actually presents to somebody. And just knowing that you might not appreciate what the person's given you as an object, but the compassion and the feeling behind it, that's what we notice all the time.
Hi, I've been married 50 years. And the day that I realised that it wasn't my husband's necessity to make me happy, it was me who makes me happy. What he does doesn't affect me, because it's the way I see it. That's it. Mm-hmm. And even down to, I used to lie in bed with him and he was going, and I do that as well. And it would turn in my head and I would think, gosh, you're really annoying me, I wish you'd shut up, turn over. And then one day I realised it didn't bother me anymore. And I actually like the fact that he snores, because he's there beside me still.
Thank you, that's so touching. Anyone else like to share, have a question? Yeah, Jason.
She just said, oh no. It does work, this microphone. You do have to speak into it. If you don't hold it close to your mouth, I can't hear you, so just so you know.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share something about Viva and romantic relationships. You know. This is more difficult than my previous talk on addiction. You know, before 3 years ago, I didn't believe that I thought it was all fantasy. You know, in England, if you grew up in England, you might have heard of Mills and Boon, you know. I used to say, it's Mills and Boon's fault. Just the idea that there is such a thing as a relationship that could be loving, you know, and I had no idea what that was. And in my psychotherapy training, they used to say, find somebody who loves you, find a healthy relationship. I'd be like, well, what the fuck is that? I wasn't modeled it as a child. I've never had one. I didn't know what it felt like to have a healthy relationship. In your talk earlier today, you said something about when you meet somebody and there's this intense attraction, you should run a mile.
Someone told me that.
Yeah, someone told you that. I remember you said it, and it struck a chord with me, because when I came to Viva 3 years ago online, I spotted Elena on the other screen, and I was curious, I sent her a message and we had one conversation, and that was the experience. It was intense attraction. And on the second conversation, I declared that, and we both felt the same, and it's 3 years later, and we've been together since then. That helped me see that wasn't Mills and Boon, that was really possible. That feeling of opening your heart to somebody else. And, when she looked at me in my eyes, beyond my idea of myself, I could feel it, and I could feel my own heart break open, the wall around it become open. And I didn't know what to do with that, because I'd never let anybody love me. And I saw that for years I'd been protecting myself and picking loveless relationships and people that couldn't see me to confirm what I believed about life and to keep myself safe. Because when I was a child, my dad went out one day and he never came back. He was killed, and love wasn't safe, and if you love somebody, they left you. I didn't even know that I believed that until somebody loved me, and I felt that extreme fear and melting and not knowing what to do and beauty all in the same moment, where I just started crying just because she was looking at me. She didn't say anything. I didn't say anything, and we just looked at each other and I cried, And so it's been a beautiful roller coaster, and I want to say that when you meet somebody and you have an intense attraction, it can be a very healing experience if both people are around an understanding like this and willing to look at themselves and not go, it's you. We do that sometimes. Not me, of course. But this has been the most healing that I've had, the most beautiful experience that I've had. And 3 years now, we met at the airport the other day, and it was like we met for the first time, and we only hadn't seen each other for 4 days, And it was like, oh God, I stood there with open arms, And I really come alive, I've stood in the airport with a big bunch of roses, dressed up, waiting, more than once. I've done many things romantically that I didn't think were in me, but I just felt like I would do anything for this woman. Because she's so beautiful, and the experience that she's given me of myself, just being that mirror that allows me to see that part of me that I wasn't willing to see myself, So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think you had your hand up now. You want to say
Like, oh, follow that.
Six?
Let's see what comes up.
You're a nasty guy.
You need a moment after that. So my question is, if you think, both of you, incompatibility is a thing between two people. And I was just so lovely listening to Jason now, and him talking about the fact that both him and Elena are very open to growing and evolving and stuff. And I find with my current partner, I am, and he is to a certain extent, but maybe not to the same extent as me. So that's what makes me occasionally think about incompatibility, and I know I'm up in my head, etc. And then leading on from that, this is more a curiosity question when you've mentioned about the honeymoon period and that ending, and I just want to hear more about that, because if we're talking about romantic relationships, obviously that does include sex, and it does include like the full thing and the passion and that intensity. If either of you would like to talk about that for yourselves.
Thank you for that, Emma.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to say, Derrick, I had a huge insight around that thing about the past relationship as well, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you, thank you. Rohini, you want something?
I start with the sex. So Angus and I often work with couples, and one of the things that we say when we're sort of meeting them and doing intake with them before they work with us is we say that we don't have an agenda about the outcome of your relationship, because often they come to us when they're thinking about calling it quits or thinking that there's incompatibility. And we say that what we're focused on is you having a deeper experience of who you are. And we use the term rewilded, so being rewilded back to your natural state of love. And from that place within yourself and the clarity and wisdom that comes from there, we trust that you'll make the decision that is best for you. And so I can't say that there's not incompatibility, but what I can say, speaking from my own experience first, is that I spent many years thinking that I was incompatible with my husband. And we were married, and we had kids, and we were briefly separated for a while, and it wasn't until I had that experience of love from within that I was able to see how I was looking for him to give me that, and he could never do that. Right? Nobody can ever give us that, and that's what I was looking for. What Jason was saying about the healing that can happen in relationships is that, it's the wisdom looking for healing in some way. I was just looking for it in a way that was never going to get fulfilled. And also my own blind spots around anger and not really seeing my part in our struggles was a problem as well. And so when we fall out of thought, like when I fell out of thought and had that experience of peace and well-being and love that I had never had that kind of depth of experience before, it helped me to have a reference point inside of myself. And it helped me to see that it wasn't about loving myself, it wasn't about Angus loving me more, it was about me remembering that space within myself, and that was really where the healing came from. And some of you have probably heard this story, but I had this experience when I did a intensive, and I had left Angus with our 2 young kids for about a week. And so I come home from this intensive all totally blissed out and happy, and he's had the kids at home for a week. And it was like the day after, I can't even remember exactly when it was, but he was kind of at the end of his rope, and he was not a happy camper. And he said something to me that was very provocative, very angry, and every other time I would have taken that personally. But it wasn't just that I would have taken it personally, it would have actually hurt. And it would have really felt like his anger being expressed toward me was the cause of that pain. And in that moment, and that was one of the big reasons I thought we were incompatible, because I kept getting hurt, and I kept blaming him for feeling hurt. And so in that moment, I didn't feel pain. It didn't hurt me that he was angry with me and that he was saying something unkind to me. And I don't think I'd ever experienced that before. And so it wasn't until then that I realized that that pain was not coming from his anger. It was not coming from his meanness in that moment, because he was being mean. but it was coming from all of the meaning that I was making up about being treated that way by my husband. What that meant about me and my unworthiness and my unlovability, and who was I to be with someone who behaved this way, and the shame. And that was what I was feeling. And in that moment, I wasn't feeling any of that. And so then he said something else, even worse, because he wasn't getting a reaction. And I still, I was really just, very grounded in that moment. And then he did, I saw Joe talk about the kind of twitch. He's like, what is happening here? And he's like, do you not have a comeback for what I'm saying? And again, this was not, like, this could have been said as a technique, which I would have done in the past, but I genuinely said, I can see your suffering. And he said that in the past he would have thought, oh, she's learned some other psychological technique that she's using on me. But he said, I saw the compassion in your eyes. I saw that you genuinely could see it, and I could see that he was not himself. And every other time I thought, this is who he is. But in that moment I saw, this is not who he is. This is him when he's suffering. This is him when he's upset. And it's got nothing to do with his love for me. It's just, he's unbalanced right now, and it's not going to stay that way. And he said, when I didn't react, because normally I would have reacted and then would have spiraled, and what we would have ended up in is what we call the dance of death, And but instead, he said, when I didn't react, he came up against his own conscience, and he realized, I'm being a dick. Like, shit, I've really overstepped now. And but he felt, right, rather than reacting to my reactivity, he realized, like, he doesn't want to be that way. He loves me. I don't deserve that treatment. And so that was such a pivotal moment in our relationship where we both got to see how we can not make each other responsible for our suffering, and how we can have room, because one of the big problems we had in our relationship, I thought it was, oh, he has an anger problem. It wasn't that problem. The real problem in the relationship was I didn't have any room for his humanity. I didn't have any room because I was so unstable, so psychologically unstable, that any sign of dysregulation on his part would send me reeling, and I couldn't handle it. But when I had a deeper grounding within myself, a deeper knowing of my own inner safety, my own well-being, my own experience of love coming from within, I could withstand his not being perfect, right? It didn't have to rock my world. It didn't have to make me so scared. And so, but not everybody's going to have that experience, right? Some people are going to connect with that depth of love within themselves, and they might decide that, this relationship is done. But what I will say is that I really encourage people not to make a reactive decision. And we know when we're coming from love, and we know when we're coming from reactivity. And whenever there's reactivity, in my experience, there's an incredible opportunity for healing. Was there a follow-up, or should we move on?
Maybe I'll give it.
Okay.
I'd just like to share two things. This is very close to my heart as well, what you're sharing, and I agree with you what you just said, because that's the experience I've had with Claire, my fiancée, as well, where I've been up in my thoughts and she's just stood there, literally, and I'm thinking, why are you not reacting? So I was coached last year from a coach in Hawaii, and he said to me, because we're having difficulties with my relationship with Claire. And he said to me, picture Claire as a book. And then it just clicked to me. There might be 1,000 chapters in that book. And each day, you'll be reading a new page each day. Doesn't matter how long that book, you might even not close that book. But that's how I see Claire now, because I'm getting to understand her like a book. And the second thing I'd like to share, someone mentioned about a love language. My love language is to empty the bins, do the washing out, do the cooking. But that's not what Claire wants. She just wants me there to be with her when she's sad or unhappy. That's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Didn't know I was going to say anything. And thanks to everyone that shared so far. I'm not in a relationship. I've not been in a relationship for some years. I just really want to thank Jason for what he said, because it really resonated with me. And so yeah, thank you for sharing your heart, Jason. So I'm referring back to a relationship that was 14 years ago, actually, and so this is about sex, actually. My question directed to Derrick. Oh. No, I think there is a question in there, but just to say that I felt we were incompatible in terms of libido. So he was 41 and I was 40, and it became apparent that I wanted sex more than he did, to put it like that. And yeah, and I can remember looking back now, I didn't know anything about the principles, but looking back now, and I've not had a chance to reflect on it actually through a three-principle lens, so it's just as it is. But I saw it as a problem. I'll be honest, I saw it as his problem. And I tried to talk to him about it, and he didn't seem to think there was a problem. And, and over some time, the relationship ended, basically. So I was a bit curious about if you had a view about that, about kind of a different sexual appetite, so, yeah.
I have to say thank you for the question. And the ones that start, I wasn't going to ask the question, they always turn out to be the most interesting questions. So again, Rohini? Do you know what it is? Even with any subject, I see it's about a balance and an understanding, because whatever the situation is, where you are in your reality and your expectations and what that other person is obviously somewhere else. And it's about finding a balance and having a conversation or having a communication to know where's the middle ground, if there is a middle ground, or where can we meet, or what can we do to solve. But when we don't discuss it, or when we don't have the conversation over it, for me, I've been in my own world, having that conversation by myself with the other person in my head, answering my questions for them, not being the ones that I want to hear, making that decision, and then it comes and the other person's probably doing the same thing. When it's just about finding the balance in a conversation or communication, and then we can probably save that time of it just petering out, or we can find the balance and see something new, and then we end up in a whole different territory. And something could change on either side. But when we just have that communication, then yeah, something might be able to shift. Because this thing's all about seeing something new. And it all takes is for one person to see something new. And that changes their whole reality. And it opens it up again to a the field of dreams, I was going to say, to bringing it somewhere amazing and just somewhere new. So yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I think I'll just say one little thing. I think one of the things is that that's really common. It's a very common challenge in relationships. And there's also a lot of conditioning around sex. So people tend to take it very personally, and like Derrick's saying, make up all kinds of stories about what that means. And when the time is taken to get that clarity and really get clear within ourselves and then have the conversation from that place, that's the possibility that Derrick's talking about. And whether it's about the dishes or sex, it doesn't really matter what it is, but when we can have those conversations from clarity, anything's possible, right?
Thank you. Now, I was just I just wanted to relate to something funny that happened to me and my husband. When I met him, I could barely speak a word of English. And I was not aware of that dimension within, and neither he was. So sometimes we react or overreact based on some beliefs. And when it was happening, the fact that we could not speak, well, I could not understand, it automatically put a space in between. So I would suggest perhaps find someone who can speak along with So be reacting and would say something, and I'm like, I could feel it was not nice, and I would say, what? What did you say? So I was opening up and said, what did you mean? What did you say? Oh, then you would not say a word. Say nothing. No, I want to know what you said, and I would translate. And then, by the time I was translating, he would disappear in the bathroom. And then reflecting, then I said, oh, you didn't. And they said, no, that's not what I meant. But so it was just like, sometimes we say things, we react, but it's really, like, it's nothing. It's just like a reaction, and then it's just a thought, and then it passes. And yeah, it's nothing exceptional. Yeah. Don't be stuck in that.
Yeah, genuinely, thank you. And I'll just make a little observation of that comment, because it's amazing. You say your boyfriend, you and him don't speak the same language, but the love can flourish with all the space that's there. But when we get into that negativity, then there's a little blocker, or it slows down a bit. So yeah, just to prove that, yeah, love flourishes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, I'm a Sydney Banks, meeting the three principals, falling in love with my wife on the same day, 4 hours apart, as I mentioned earlier. And so we were a three principals romance. I met Sid, I was falling in love with Michael, I didn't know if it was the principals, if it was I liked Sid because I was falling in love, I didn't know what was going on. It was very confusing. But we've been married for 43 years, so far, so good. But I would have to say, what I wanted to share is that, even though we knew the principles, even though we were definitely meant to be in love, we knew that we were soulmates. That was kind of like, there he is, my friend over there falling in love at a three principles thing, that without the principles, it would have been a really, really rocky road, because we couldn't be more different personality-wise. She's an artist, she has no sense of time whatsoever. Everything has to be done at time, I'm very organized. Well, she would probably argue that that's bullshit. I think of myself that way. But, and we have had rough patches where we had to go to Lacanner and work on our marriage, because we had to change. Both of us had to change, and I think I probably had to change a hell of a lot more than she did. Leslie told me that. But the principles, no matter how rocky it gets, it is the way back, because when you are dropped into who you really are, there's only love. And you see past the differences. And you see the bridge. So I can't tell you how many times I've said, thank God for Sydney Banks, or I would never still be married. And thank God for Sydney Banks, because she was the bait that got me to meet Sydney Banks. Joe, there's this woman we want you to meet, and we want you to hear Sid Banks. Oh, I don't know about Sid Banks, but
Oh, well, thank you. I think that's it for now. But so great to be with all of you. And if there's any other questions at any point, please feel free to come up to either one of us. I'll speak for you too. Thank you.